You're watching the New Stack Makers, a podcast for people who develop, deploy, and manage at-scale software. For more information and articles about at-scale technologies, please visit thenewstack.io. Now enjoy the show.
Unleash developer productivity for the software-powered world by fundamentally changing how you deliver software to your customers. With LaunchDarkly's feature management platform, empowered developers can empower the business to release new features faster and more efficiently than ever.
Welcome to another episode of the New Stack Makers podcast. I'm your host, Heather Joslyn, features editor of the New Stack, and today we're going to talk about what's next for feature flags. Feature flags are feature toggles in software development that allow for feature management. You can deploy alternative versions of a feature when you want, such as making premium features available to certain customers. But what are the benefits of feature flags, not only for the end user, but for the organization that creates them? What's new and what's next? To help us unpack this concept, we're joined today by Karishma Irani, head of product at LaunchDarkly. Hi, Karishma.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me back. As you can see, I've moved offices since our last podcast, so please meet my new background. A brief intro for our listeners. I lead the core product team at LaunchDarkly, which, if you're not aware, is a feature management platform with feature flags at its core.
As regular listeners of TNS Makers may recall, Karishma joined us earlier this year to talk about LaunchDarkly, and what it has learned is it uses its own platform, so we'll think of her as our returning champion. and we'll link to that previous episode in the show notes, and we're delighted to have her join us again. We are also, this is sponsored by LaunchDarkly, this podcast, and we're happy to have them return as sponsors. So let's get started. So we know from our previous discussions that feature flags can be very useful in hiding or revealing features from customers and other end users. But let's start drilling down a bit into some of the major benefits for the organization that uses feature flags. Karishma, what do you think is what are some of the overall benefits?
Simply put, it's release management at scale. When you think about everything that a software team builds, every piece of code that a developer writes, every new feature release, every hotfix pushed out, it's all in an effort to create positive customer impact. Releases can be complex and require tons of orchestration across teams, tools, time zones, metrics, and customers. Mm-hmm. LaunchDarkly aims to be the tool that consolidates all of this and simplifies releases. And it does this by having developers use LaunchDarkly to do continuous deployment, while letting product managers manage the release cycle and allowing business stakeholders to measure the impact and metrics from those releases.
How might an organization use feature flags to spur innovation?
Yeah, that's a question we actually get pretty often, especially from some of our customers who've been using us for many years and are ready to now advance to that next stage of feature management. So this actually maps relatively well to how we've internally thought about our customers' maturity model based on years of insight and feedback. Mm-hmm. When organizations think about feature flags, similar to what you said, they start by thinking about the most basic use case of hiding or showing a part of their web application. And that's not an uncommon use case for why small teams start out with LaunchDarkly. However, over time, we observe our customers engage with more advanced use cases, feel the need for more value from LaunchDarkly, mm-hmm. which in turn unlocks and spurs that innovation. So let me give you a concrete example of this.
Okay.
One of our most engaged customers, Drone Deploy, who's an easy and fast solution for building aerial maps and models using drone technology. Mm-hmm. So pretty high technology stuff. Started out on a journey with LaunchDarkly years ago to test out new functionality behind flags on their production infrastructure. Because as you can imagine, it's a relatively high risk tool. And so over time, they matured to running experiments with LaunchDarkly, which actually unlocked new facet of value for them, allowing them to be innovative with new ideas and run A/B tests. And by definition of running A/B tests, product teams are excited to think about new ideas. Engineering teams are excited to build multiple variations of something.
Mm-hmm.
And so with LaunchDarkly, this was possible. And all of this was possible by making sure that you're releasing the most impactful version. So all in all, we've observed that when the risk of releasing something is lowered, when the risk of introducing bugs in production or breaking something is reduced, is lowered, our customers feel organically motivated to be more innovative and think about new ideas and take risks.
In the tech industry, people often talk about what they learned from failure, and it seems like this sort of thing lowers the stakes for fail. Like you can try something, if it doesn't work, it's not the whole it's not the whole feature. It's or the whole product. It's just a test, you know.
Absolutely. One of my, if our co-founder and CTO John Kurnamal was here, he would share a story about how, in my early days as a product manager at LaunchDarkly, I had high conviction that version A of something was going to lead to higher conversion, and he was convinced that version B was. So instead of arm wrestling it out, we just launched an experiment with both of these versions to a small cohort of customers. And I was wrong. So now our product team uses experimentation and to achieve higher conviction and to ensure that everything we release is going to lead to business outcomes.
I wanted to ask a little bit about custom context, which I understand is a new capability for LaunchDarkly, and how did that come about? Was that, I know the last time we talked, you mentioned that because LaunchDarkly uses its own product, it learns a lot about what works, what doesn't, what customers want. Can you tell us a little bit about the journey to custom context and what it does?
Yeah. So this might have been one of those few features that wasn't actually inspired by dog fooding. And it's because when we think about releasing things to our customers, we think about them as users, so individual members using LaunchDarkly, or accounts. And when we're releasing something, we either add individual users and target them as true, or create rules targeting accounts or segments that contain those users and accounts. But we're not representative of the whole, and we're not representative of all of our customers. We have over 20% of the Fortune 500 customers, which includes accounts in healthcare, in the airline industry, in the service industry, and lots of software tools, of course. So when you think about how they think about their customers when they're releasing features, it's not always users. In some cases, they think about their customers as devices, tenants, organizations. So, and a very interesting example and a very real one is a media platform that delivers to devices, project management software that delivers to accounts, or healthcare that delivers to facilities. And similar to almost all the feature flagging tools, feature management tools in this space, LaunchDarkly until recently only supported targeting users or serving experiences to users. And we noticed that what this led to was a lot of hacks and workarounds that our customers had to do to basically use LaunchDarkly for releasing software. So let's say I work at a healthcare company. I want to use LaunchDarkly to release a new feature or a new capability to a set of facilities or to certain patient groups. I would typically have to keep that information in my mind or use some kind of hacky workaround to map those to what LaunchDarkly considers as users and only accepts users. With custom context, that's no longer the case. So custom context allows allows LaunchDarkly's customers to pass custom context, which could include a multi-level hierarchy of a context, multi-kind context, and use any of those attributes to target by. So what this allows you to do is basically unlocks two capabilities. The first is deliver to any kind of thing. And I use the word thing because it could be a user, device, tenant. So when you're implementing LaunchDarkly, you can move beyond user targeting and instead define your own kinds of contexts that map best to your business language and deliver to as many kinds of things in a single flag. So if you have a single feature that you're planning to roll out, you can now target that feature to X, Y, and Z users, A, B, and C devices, GHI tenants, whatever it might be, plans, tiers, etc. And this really unlocks a lot of valuable, cool new use cases for our customers without requiring extra effort on their end. And with custom context, it's not just for flag targeting. We've actually extended it to experimentation, segments, all kinds of fun functionality.
That's great. So it sounds like one aspect of this is making it more developer friendly. It's making it more so they don't have to do workarounds and so forth. What would you say are some of the most prominent use cases for that, for custom context?
Yeah. So when we internally sat and talked about what the impact of custom context could be, and the reason we did this is because it's not a new capability that we're selling to customers. It's an upgrade of our entire platform, and it required our teams rewriting our data model and SDKs from scratch to support this functionality. So a huge lift for many, many months. We're extremely proud of our team for getting it out successfully. And so when we talked about the impact, we thought about it in a twofold manner. The first was eliminating risk for our customers. So if you're a user of LaunchDarkly and you have to translate the mental model of your customers, how you think about your users, into LaunchDarkly's application and product, that's a huge lift and could introduce human error and could cause problems.
Right.
So one is we wanted to eliminate risk by having this be a first-class experience and allow you to map your data model into LaunchDarkly. And the second piece of this is really enabling complex deliveries. So in the past, we've had customers who have had to create multiple flags, and they've named a flag feature A hyphen users, feature A hyphen devices, feature A hyphen tenants. And that's how they've sort of separated out their targeting for different end users or different types of users or contexts on their end. With custom context, that's no longer the case. With custom context, if you're a user of LaunchDarkly and you want to create a really advanced targeting use case and say, I want to serve this specific thing to a set of devices and tenants, etc., you don't have to put in the extra effort. You can target to any kind of thing and to as many kinds of things as possible.
What do you say? Would you say what might be some of the best practices that people could use to get the most out of the current, launch the feature flags in general, and but also LaunchDarkly with custom context?
Yeah. The first thing that we guide our customers to do in this case is have a plan that communicates what the pain point is for you and what the value that you expect to get is. And then work with us to ensure that you can map that out to across the maturity curve to the next step of value that you can unlock and the sets of things that could get you there. And beyond that, the next stage and so on. Once you feel that your team's getting value from LaunchDarkly, sharing that with other teams within your organization. It's kind of like when you join a software company and you find out that they're using 3 different issue tracking tools. Kind of want to turn around and leave. Similarly, you don't want to be part of an engineering organization where Team A is using LaunchDarkly to decouple the deploys from releases using feature flags. And team B is deploying everything to production immediately and releasing it for your customers. So LaunchDarkly works best. Feature management works best when every software team within an organization is collaborating across all of their releases within that single tool. And actually, to support this, we've launched first class team capability. So you can organize different members into teams, control their permissions, the visibility of different resources within LaunchDarkly, etc. So yeah, overall, I think what I would suggest as a best practice to organizations in this feature management journey is have a plan, use LaunchDarkly, share it with the other teams because you're going to get the most value when multiple teams are collaborating towards releases.
Mhm.
And then finally, just extend beyond what you know about feature flags. So push your limits, push your imagination. A great example of this is one of our customers that's using feature flags to actually manage their rate limits, API rate limits,
Wow.
which is not a typical feature flagging use case. We also have customers who have their support teams using our Zendesk integration for when someone files a support ticket with them saying, I don't have access to A, B, and C feature, or can I trial this new feature?
Mhm.
They don't need to bother the development team or the product team. The support team can just directly turn that feature on for the customer directly from within Zendesk. And similarly with Salesforce for sales teams.
Mhm.
So it's one of those tools where you can manage your end user's experience and everything that your engineering team builds across every single team within your organization.
Okay. And did you? My understanding, I read the blog that's on the LaunchDarkly website about custom context, and so also it integrates with Microsoft Teams. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So we've supported a webhook integration with Microsoft Teams for a long time. However, after hearing overwhelmingly positive feedback about our first class Slack app that we support for LaunchDarkly, we built a similar app for MS Teams. And the main reason for that is I am one of those people who doesn't like checking their email. And I imagine many developers don't. And so we want to make sure that LaunchDarkly isn't just one extra tool that you have to use or have to log into, and it's a seamless part of your developer flow, a seamless part of your ecosystem. And that's one of our core tenets here when we build any new feature or functionality.
Like if you're a team leader or manager and you're trying to sort of get support among your organization, for people to use LaunchDarkly for feature flag management and custom context and so forth. How do you frame that argument? How can you frame that argument the best?
Yeah, that's actually a question we've gotten a lot, especially over the last year, given the macroeconomic conditions. Because a lot of our customers, including ourselves, have taken a hard look at their toolkit and questioned whether every single tool is bringing value for cost-cutting purposes. And so we've had customers who've reached out to us and basically asked us the question around how can we communicate the value of LaunchDarkly to our C-suite? We love it. Our engineering team refuses to build software without it. But how do we communicate this to our executives? That's one of the failure modes that a lot of software tools can get into, where they target a single persona and the value stays extremely isolated, extremely limited to that group. And so I, as a product manager, unless I'm in a tool like Figma, for example, collaborating with my designer, I might not know what that tool that my design team uses brings. And so similarly, as an executive leader, as an economic buyer, or as a product director, you might ask yourself, what is the value that LaunchDarkly brings to our engineering teams, and why should we continue using it? Why should it be a critical part of our toolkit? And so one of the key things is LaunchDarkly extends beyond just being a tool for developers. to being a tool for software teams across project managers, release managers, revenue teams, support teams, as well as executive leaders to measure business impact. When you think about what a C-suite cares about, it essentially boils down to two things. Are we building things that are minimizing risk? And are we building things that are maximizing value? And because everyone talks about the notion of speed, but speed means nothing if you put yourself in a risky situation or if you're moving fast without creating value. So LaunchDarkly aims at doing both of those things. For developer teams, for software teams, we reduce risk, we mitigate risk, and allow them to move fast by decoupling the deploys from releases, allowing them to test in production infrastructure, do controlled rollouts, provide kill switches, essentially allow them to control the blast radius of everything that they put out in production. For executive teams and product leaders, we allow them to measure the business impact of all of these changes. And this is actually done in two ways. One is if you care about running experiments like we discussed, where you just want to try out a bunch of different ideas, you want to run A/B tests. This is the tool you can use to do that. And it's not an additional tool that your developers need to use. It's the same tool that they already use. But the second aspect is ensuring that the operational metrics stay steady. And so actually one of the key things that LaunchDarkly is working on with the theme of what's next.
Yes, that was my next question. What is next?
So I'm getting ahead of myself because I'm so excited.
Well, let's tell us about it.
It is a feature that we're internally calling release impact, and it is intended to measure any metrics that you want to measure, whether operational metrics or business metrics, proactively. So let me walk you through this. Typically, the way a team that uses LaunchDarkly releases software is the developer writes the code, it's complete in the dev environment, they push it to staging, teams test in staging, make sure things are okay, merge the code to production, and then someone starts a production rollout, likely a canary release or progressive rollout. And the goal of doing a progressive rollout is to look at your business metrics and operational metrics in whatever tools you might use to make sure that things look fine. And if things look fine, you're going to turn it up a bit more and then turn it up a bit more, all the way to 100%. But that's the notion of controlling the blast radius. One of the core things that LaunchDarkly is attempting to do is automate this process and make it simpler and more proactive. So if I'm a product leader, if I'm a release manager, I can attach a metric to a progressive rollout, and this can be a metric like conversion rate, attach rate, ARR. It can be a business North Star metric, or it can be operational metrics like latency, error rate, whatever it might be. And tell LaunchDarkly, start my rollout. LaunchDarkly does a progressive rollout in 1% increments or 5% increments or whatever you specify. And as soon as we notice something's going wrong, one of those metrics is spiking, we roll it back to the last stable state and notify you. So this is extremely cool because you don't need to be alerted and then have to go to LaunchDarkly, turn it off, and then go back and try troubleshooting it. LaunchDarkly kind of does that for you.
So it's automated. You don't have to sort of babysit it. You don't have to, it'll do it. And also it sounds like, and if something's not working, you can minimize the risk. You can roll it back.
Right. Yeah. And I'm not sure about you, but when I'm in a situation, when I'm in a high stress situation and I've been paged, it's kind of hard to figure out what stable looks like. I've been part of engineering teams where we're scrambling to figure out what version we should roll back to. And this sort of leads into the concept of configuration as code. LaunchDarkly wants to simplify that for you. And so if we notice that your progressive rollout is causing one of the metrics that you've attached, that you've specified, that you care about to spike, we will roll it back to the last stable state. And actually, I want to give a big shout out to our data analyst team, because this is not a simple feat. Because in reality, you don't have a single flag that's being rolled out. You have hundreds of flags with progressive rollout simultaneously. So figuring out which feature it is, which flag it is, which rollout it is, that's negatively impacting that metric, and only rolling that back to the last stable state is a huge achievement.
So it sounds like something to really look forward to. And what is the timetable for? So that's called release impact. Is that?
That's our internal code name.
Okay. And what is the tentative timetable for that?
We're working on releasing release impact, or building this new functionality as part of a larger effort where we're reimagining the last mile of feature delivery. We're reimagining the process of continuous release. And so this process includes not just attaching metrics, guardrail metrics to each of your releases, but also enforcing best practices, which certain organizations have. Examples of those include things like, I want every change in production to be approved by at least 3 engineering managers, and I want the error rate and latency metrics attached. But I want every change in staging to just require 1 approval, but at least sit in my sandbox environment for 7 days before it's promoted to staging. Mm-hmm. So organizations have these implicitly. We have them implicitly at LaunchDarkly. And typically they're documented as part of spreadsheets, calendar invites, or just internal tribal knowledge that lives in internal wikis. We want to bring all of this information into a single tool and make it easy for everyone to do the right thing. So that's our tagline, make it easy for developers to do the right thing. And one of my favorite phrases is something a customer said to us recently, which is, which I find to sound kind of bleak, but I'm going to say it anyway. He said, I want all of my developers, I want all of my engineers to fall into a pit of success.
Wow. That's a vivid image.
That's a vivid image. But it actually describes the core practice of there's a lot to do when you're releasing features. There's a lot to do when you're moving fast, you're building multiple things, you're trying to reduce risk, but also measure business impact and collaborating with multiple parties on a single release. It's a lot. Mm-hmm. We at LaunchDarkly want to make sure that we can simplify this as much as possible for you, automate it as much as possible, and more importantly, just make it easy for you to follow the best practices, have the guardrail metrics in place, automate things wherever possible, and most importantly, know the impact of every single change that you put out in production.
Okay. And thank you very much, Karishma, for joining us today. That's a wrap. We'd like to thank Karishma Irani from LaunchDarkly, and LaunchDarkly. We'd also like to thank as well as our sponsor, and we'd like to thank all of you for joining us today. This has been Heather Joslyn for the New Stack Makers. We'll see you next time.
If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on all the major social media platforms. You can always find us at thenewstack.io. We hope to see you soon.